I welcome you to my Tailwind CSS course. This course is my first ever Tailwind CSS, guys, and in this course, I'm going to be taking you from zero to hero in CSS Tailwind. I'm going to be taking your hand from the very beginning until you become a professional in Tailwind CSS. Now, before you can be able to join this course, you must have a little knowledge of HTML and CSS. But if you don't have any knowledge of HTML and CSS, I advise you to make sure you visit um, my video on HTML and CSS, which I will tag above here. Now, once you have a small or little knowledge of HTML and CSS, you are ready to go. It doesn't matter whether you have written any line of CSS framework before, maybe Bootstrap or Tailwind before, because this course will take you from the very beginning until you become a professional. Now, so let's understand what Tailwind is. So Tailwind is a CSS library which enables us to write front-end styling without writing any line of CSS. So we are basically going to be writing HTML classes, which we are going to use to style up this website entirely. Now, this is a CSS library, which means that this is a CSS that has been written by a third party, but we are referencing the classes. We're going to be using some special utility classes to style up this our website. Tailwind uses utility CSS classes to style up our entire web page, and we're going to see how this is done. So the first thing we are going to be looking at is to see how to install Tailwind. Now this is going to be using HTML. So because we are going to be using HTML, we're going to be making use of the CDN. But there are so many ways to install Tailwind. If you are using React, you can use npm or yarn. If you're using any other framework, front-end library or framework, then you can use npm or yarn. But for the purpose of this class, which we are going to be making use of simple HTML, we are just going to be making use of the CDN. Right here, if you come to the Tailwind CSS documentation, this is the website. I'm going to leave it in the video description below. If you come to the documentation, we are actually on the version 4.1, and these are the so many ways we can install Tailwind. We can use Vite, and that is with npm. You can also use post CSS, which you can also use npm, Tailwind CLI, which is also by using npm, framework guide, which is where you see how you can install it in different frameworks. If you are working with Next.js, you will see how to install it on Next.js applications. If you're working with Laravel, if you're working with Nuxt, Solid.js, SvelteKit, Gatsby, Angular, Ruby on Rails, React Router, TanStack, Phonix, Paso, Symfony, Michio, and so many other different frameworks. But for now, let's use the CDN. I am going to just copy this because it contains the simple CDN which I will be using for this. Now, if you read here, it says, use the play CDN to try Tailwind right in the browser. without any build setup. The Play CDN is designed for development purposes only. So we use this for development purposes only, and it's not intended for production. And the Play CDN script, add the Play CDN script to your HTML. So we need to add the script to our HTML, which they have done for us right here. Again, it says try adding some custom CSS. If you want some custom CSS, you can try this one out. But let's use the first one. So I've copied this. I need to start up my HTML. So I created a folder which I call header. I'm going to move it to the Visual Studio Code. Now, let's create index.html. And then we paste what we just copied. Now, we need to tweak these things around. But before we do that, let me show you what we would have. So we need to run the server. Now this is what we have. Let's have this side by side. Now, look at what we have here. This is just a simple HTML, which is hello world. And these are the classes that gave it this style. If I remove these classes, I want you to take a notice what would happen if I do what? If I remove the classes. You can see that this is now so tiny that you may not even be able to see it. So this is the basic styling that comes with the Tailwind CSS. If I remove this script that we have here, so this is the basic HTML that we all have without any styling. But once you bring in the Tailwind CSS, you would notice that we begin to have something like this. Let me actually mute my A. Now, before I do anything, before I explain anything, I want to show you something. So notice something. I didn't write any CSS right here, but what happened is that I am referencing some basic classes or some utility classes, and I am having this style in my website. So this is how Tailwind works. So there are some bunch of CSS written somewhere. I'm not gonna be talking about that, but there are some bunch of CSS utilities that were written somewhere, and we're referencing these utility classes into our own project, thereby importing that CSS which we require for the style of this entire website. This is how Tailwind works. Now, let's see how to work with text, because this is the first thing I want us to look at. So right here, we are going to remove this. Let me remove everything. And then let's create h1 and use lorem 5. So we generate some 5 random text. I'm going to make sure that the HTML lang is English so that this translation of a thing will stop. All right, so we have this now, and we want to work with text. Anytime we want to work with text, we look for the class or the utility class called text. And this is because we want to work with text. If I remove this text, so we work with text. Now, let us talk about the text sizes or the font sizes. Now, if we want to work with the sizes of the font or the text, what we basically do is we attach size to the text. Watch what I'll do. So I have text and I do -lg. Notice that there is an increment in the size of the text. If I do XL, watch, notice what is happening. And then if I do 2XL, then I can also do 3XL, and it keeps getting larger and larger. 4XL, 5XL, 6XL. So this keeps getting larger. So for any size that you want to achieve, you basically need to give it the sizing of that size. I will take you back to the Tailwind documentation so that we can look at this right away. All right, so if you go to the typography in the documentation, this is where you get to find out everything about text. And the first, the font size, if you come there, you see we have text-XS, which is the smallest size. And if you look at the size here, you're going to see that the font size here is 0.75 rem, which is equivalent to 12 pixels. And for the text-SM, we have 0.875, which is equivalent to 14 pixels. And the text base, which is 1 rem is equivalent to 16 pixels. The text-LG-XL, -2XL, 3XL, 4XL, 5, and to the 9th XL. But we can still give this a custom property, like we can just say font size, and then we attach the value of the size of that font that we want. But let's first of all exhaust what we have here. You can find this from the documentation. I will leave the link to this documentation in the video description below. So right here, I'm going to, let me remove this one. So right here now, we can actually customize the sizes accordingly. You can customize the sizes accordingly. So let's say we want a size, so we can just attach the size. So let's say 34 rem. And you can see how large this becomes. You can also use 34 pixels, and you can see we can actually specify the size we want instead of using the -XL, 3XL, 4XL, 5XL, and all that. You can actually specify your size right from here. And you can pick any unit of your choice, like pixels, like rem, and so on. So let's continue. All right, having done the font sizing, let's look at the font family. How do we control the font family of this text? Now, I want you to also remember, since we are still on the typography, the basic utility class is text. So, if we want to pick any font families, let's say we want to pick font family sans, we can just say text dash sans, and this is going to keep our typography as sans. If you go to the documentation, you are going to see that right from here. And sans is the sans serif, system UI, sans serif, apple color emoji, and all that. We can also specify other ones, and if you come so let's look at the sans serif, font serif. Let's also look at that. Font text dash serif. So the serif is this font. Okay, so the font class is font, actually, not text. So font, you can see we have some changes. But before I continue, let me increase the text size. So the text size is going to be text dash 3XL, so that we can be able to see the font changes. So we can also change this to sans. Let's see, sans, and we have the sans. Or we can use the custom sans, the custom style. So you right inside here, you put up the font family you want to pick. Okay, so it depends on the available fonts you have in your system. So, but I think some of these fonts like sans, they come pre-installed with Tailwind, but you can still install other third-party fonts right here. Again is the font smoothing. So looking into the font smoothing, so this is just to smoothen the fonts, and the utility class is the anti-aliased and sub-pixel anti-aliased. And if you want to understand what is going on right there, you can actually see the WebKit or the styles that we have right here. So, but let's see what this thing can do. Like, let's look at some of that in action. I'm going to copy the anti-aliased, and we are going to add that to the class. And this is just the font smoothing. Let me change this from Open Sans to Sans. And this is what we have right here. So we can also have the sub anti-aliased, sub-pixel anti-aliased class. So some of you may be wondering, how would you be able to memorize all these things? So, but the simple truth is that you don't actually memorize all these things. You just begin to remember them as you use them. The more you use them, the more you begin to remember them anytime you want to use them. It's just like that. You don't memorize them because there are a lot of these utility classes, but if you have the capacity to memorize them, then we can go ahead. But I don't advise you to memorize them, but just try as much as possible. Anytime you want to work, try to use them. If you forget anything, try to go through the documentations, and from these documentations you can be able to fix all these things. As you use them constantly, you begin to remember them without having to look into anything. So that's just it. Now let's look into the font style. Font styling, we can just add the utility classes like italics, non-italics to specify whether we want to italize them or non-italize them. Let's see that in action. So right now this font is non-italiced, but we can still italize it by just adding italics. Sorry, not italics, but italic. And you can notice that this has turned into italics. We can also non-italize them if we want to change it to a normal text. So I'm going to do that with another one. Let's make another H1 and just say hello world and use the I element for italics to convert it into italics. And you can see we have italics here. Now I can use the class non-italic. Let's see the original. Okay, not italic. So we can copy that and put it here. And this is going to convert it into a non-italics. And let me, okay, see what I think I should do right now is to put it up in the I. So look at it. So you can see we have this right now as a normal text without being italicized, even though we still have an I tag which converts it to italics. So this is what the not italic can do. Next, we are going to be looking into the font weight. So for the font weight, we can set up the font weight using font thin, font extra light, font light, font normal, font medium, semi-bold, bold, extra bold, black, and so on. You can even customize. But I want you to take a close look at the style. If you pick font thin, this is the CSS values and property that you are picking. So if you are picking thin, you are picking font weight of 100. If you are picking font extra light, then you are picking font weight of 200. So just like that, but you can still pick the value that you want. So let's see how this works in real life. So let's use this. I'm going to remove the ones we've done. I'm going to have some paragraph with lorem 8, and I want to change the class to font thin. So as you can see right here, font dash thin. and this is going to turn it into a very tiny font size. We can use light font light, as you can see right here, font normal, font bold. Let us look at the font bold, and this is the font bold. We also have extra bold and so on, but then you can see extra bold, font black, and then we can set up our sizes. So let's set our custom size. So if you want to set up a custom size, then you do this way. So let's say my font is going to be 1200 pixels. If there is something like that, or 900. So you can see what I have right there as my font size. So you can set up the font size accordingly as you want, if you want your own custom sizing. The next we are going to look at, I'm not going to be looking into these examples because with my own example you'll be able to solve these things. Font stretch. I believe that by the time we look into some important things right here, you will be able to do the rest of these things by yourself. So right here is font stretch, the utility class for selecting the width of a font face. So here, font stretch ultra condense, and you can see the styling here. So, but let me pick font stretch expanded. So we already have our font size as 900. Then here we can set up the font stretch as expanded. In fact, let me use normal here, font normal. And this is the font normal or font bold. And then if you now do font stretch expanded, and we are having this. You can also set up your custom values as you want right from here. Let us look at the letter spacing and line height before we move to something else. So letter spacing. For the letter spacing, this is how you space up your letters in a text. So for example, you can notice that this text here is compacted. They look closely attached to each other. But if you come down here, this one looks like they are much more separated from each other. So if we use the letter spacing class, which we have here as tracking tighter, in fact the utility class is tracking, so we can have tracking tighter, tracking wide, tracking wider, and widest. Let's look at some of it. Tracking dash tighter. And you can notice that the text looks closely compacted together. But if we use tracking wider, notice that the text looks like they are much more separated from each other. We also have the widest, and you can notice that they look so wide from each other. We can even set our own custom tracking. So let's say 440 or 400 pixels. And you can notice that they are now much more separated. 40 pixels. You can notice what we have here, and this is because of my own custom styling. So let's give it 9 pixels, and you can notice what we have right here. So this is just what this um, letter spacing can do for us. Let us look at the line height. So for the line height is when you write something at the top and you write another below it, the space they are going to give to themselves, that is line height. Just like here we have this and we have this, the space that we have here is what the line height represents. Just as you can see here, notice the line height. This is leading 6, leading 7, and leading 8. You can notice the differences in the sizes of the line height, that is the space between the top and the bottom. So the normal class for that is text, then followed by the size. Okay, so we can have the text and then followed by the size, or you can also use this class of leading with the number of the height. Okay, so let's go here and test it out. So or rather, let's add the class leading dash 7. Notice something, but before I do that, let me add more content. Lorem 15 or 16, add more content. So if we do leading 5, notice something, the height decreases, but if we do leading 8, so you notice that the line height is increasing here. So this is line height, and this is the class that we use for that. But you can still use the text class to do that. For example, you can do text and then you give it a size, right? You give it a size. So you pick the size of the text and then you give it the number. All right, so if you want to test it out, let's see that. So let's see it in action. We are going to remove that and then we say text dash sm. Okay, now the text is smaller, divided by 5. So the 5 now becomes the line height. But if you see 9, then the 9 becomes the line height. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. But we can also have the 3XL right here, and you can see we still have exactly what we have. Then the 5 becomes the line height, as you can see here, 9, and this becomes the line height. Okay, so I hope this makes sense right now. The next class we are going to be looking into is the list image or list style image. So this list style image is when you want to style up a list of items. So especially when you are using something like the UL, that's the unordered list or ordered list. So let's look at some of the examples we have here. And if you look here, you see we have the UL and we have some lists. All right. And we used the class of this to style it up. Then this will now take the URL to the path where the image you want to use for that is. So let's do something similar to that. I'm going to remove all the ones we already have here, and I'm going to just do some paragraph and say list of food. All right, and then I'll make a URL and then make some LOI and say that this is fufu. LOI, this is jollof. LOI again, this is moi moi. And finally, LOI, this is um, yam porridge. All right, so this is the list of food that I have. So let's style this up. I have an image right here in the images directory, and this is bullet.png, and I'm going to be making use of that for, so this is the image I'm going to be making use of. So let's see how this will be done, and we're going to use the class, and this class is going to be class of list style image, sorry, list image, list image. So let's do that, list dash image, and this is going to now take your own argument, which is going to contain the URL part to the image. So this is going to be URL, and then inside this URL, you now pass in where the image is. So this image is in the current directory slash images slash bullet dot png. So notice something, the the image is not actually showing, but there are so many there is something that is of concern right here, which is the space that these things gave to themselves. That is something that is of concern. But let's check to see where if we had a mistake. So if you look here, it says use the list image with value syntax to control the marker image for this for list item, and then this is what we have. Okay, so this is what we have. So this is, I don't know why the image is not showing, but this is just what it is. So we have this. You can go ahead to, tweak these things around to see what will come out of there. So but I think this image is too large. That may be the problem, because this image is too large for it. What you actually need is just a very tiny image just to style up the list. Okay, All right, that's for the list. You can also set up some other classes for the list style. Instead of list style image, you can also pick other list styles, like right here, list style type or list style position. Okay, so let's look at the list style type. So we have list disk. Let's pick the disk. If I change this class to list disk, notice what will happen here. So the list disk and the list decimal. I don't know why these things are not showing up right here. Or maybe I don't have some of these icons right um, in my CDN. Let's look at let's go back to that installation again. And look for maybe something is missing. So everything is okay. Everything is okay. So I don't think there is something missing. Anyways, let's just continue. So having done this, let's look at some of the other ones. So this is just typography. There are a lot to typography. There are a lot to typography, but I am just going to look at some few things under the typography, which are the colors, and then the text align, text decoration color, and all that. There are a lot to typography, but that's why there is documentation. You can simply go there and read the documentation. I've shown you the simple way of using this Tailwind. So let's move to the text color. So in the text color, I am going to make this much text, say LRM 15, and we have this, and I'm going to be making them a little bit bigger with text dash 2XL, and this is what we have right now. Now let's talk about the colors. So for the colors, let me actually open the color. So for the colors, there are a lot of colors which we can pick from, and I am looking for where they gave the full details about the Tailwind colors, which we can see somewhere right here. I'm not sure, but there's a place where you can get the full gist about their colors. But nevertheless, I'm going to show you that color. So let's come back here, and we want to work on the color. We can just give a space here and use text dash then the value of the color, so maybe red, but you don't just say red, because red does not have value. So what you just do is you either pick red 100 or you pick red 200. So the higher you go, the deeper the color becomes. So you can have 300, we can have 400, we can have 500, I think 600, 700, 800, 900. So 900, at 900 you notice that the color becomes deeper. All right, so let's keep it at 500. So this is how we can change from one color to the other. We can also change this to blue, 500, blue 300, and so on. We can even change to slate, and this is slate 500, and so on. We can even have yellow, and this is yellow 500. So any color at all that you want, you can just specify it right inside here and it will work. Okay, but you can pick a specific color you like, because this is the Tailwind color class, but you can pick any custom color of your choice by using this block bracket and then specifying any RGB or hex color of your choice. Let me pick E2F00. Sorry. And you can see that this is the color. So any color of your choice, you can pick it right here. So this is why so many people are talking about Tailwind over Bootstrap, because Bootstrap is opinionated, and what they have there in Bootstrap is just some classes for colors like primary, secondary, um, um, danger, info, all those things. And if you want to tweak the colors, you can just set up some variable, and this makes the entire CSS so cumbersome, so big, that it might affect the performance of the website. But when you are working with Tailwind, you will notice that everything is light, because you have the freedom to specify what you want and what you don't want. And that is why people are talking about Tailwind. So you can pick your own color right here. All right, let's just have this. Now, let's look at how we can align these things, this text, from one place to the other. That's from right to left, from left to right, from right to center, from center to left, and all that. How do we do that? So we can just simply use the text dash center to move this to the center, and you can see this is now center. If we want to move it to the right, we use text right and we move it to the right. For the left, we can use text left to move it to the left. This is just how we can move it from one place to the other. So you can text align this anyhow as you want. All right, before I proceed, I want us to do some exercise. So this exercise is, we're going to be making a nav bar, navigation bar. So we are going to create a tag for the nav. This nav is going to contain the logo. So let's create a class for logo. So we're going to do h1 for the logo, and we call this logo. So, and then we are going to now have our UL for our nav. which will contain the LOI and the A for our so I'm going to just do something right here. Copy this and duplicate it maybe 3 more times, and I can have about here. I can have services, and I can have contact. All right, so notice something, that the logo and the menu seems to be off. Now we need to start with our nav. Let's give it a class, and we want to work on the background first. So to work on background, the class is going to be BG. So anytime you want to work on the background, the class is BG. So BG dash the color of the background you want. So if you want black, you can simply say black, and this is the black. And if you want text as white, you can just simply use text white, and you can see all the text becomes white. Now we want to align all these things side by side to each other, so we can use display flex. Just type flex, and you can see this appears side by side to each other. We can move them separate by using justify. Let's use space between. So for space between, we just say justify between. Now let's set all these ones side by side as well. So we come here, give it a class, and the class is going to be flex, so that we can have them side by side. Now that they are flex, we can give them gap of maybe 2. 2 is very small, let's say 4. Now they have given themselves gap, and we have created this navigation, but then the navigation does not give us something that is good to look at, so we can just pad the nav area. So for padding, we use P, so we can say padding is 4, and this is what we have. Right now we need to have some hover effect on this one, that is on the navigation, as well as have cursor pointer on the logo. Now to do that, we can give the class right here, class as hover. So whenever you want to have a hover effect, you use the class hover with this, and we can start giving it some styling. So we can give it BG dash white, and you can see on hover you have a white hover effect. And then text dash black, and you can see the text is now visible. Padding, which is P dash, let's say 3 or 4. P dash 3. BG white. So right now the text, the background is white, but the text is not visible. So anytime we want to have this hover effect, we just have to add this class hover, and then For the text, we are going to say text dash black, and then finally we are going to give it some padding, p dash maybe 3. Let's see what happens. So the 3 is too big, so let's do 2. But just that, you can see it is a little bit making sense a little bit. Let me just increase the padding in this one so that I can have something so whatever you want to say, so we can even do rounded to have this rounded. So now for this class, we can take this class to all the other parts, like copy it, take it to the LOI here, take it here, and also take it here. So right now we have a good navigation without having to suffer ourselves trying to write any form of CSS. So if this is the first time you are joining my class, make sure you hit on the subscription button and hit on the notification bell so that anytime I post a video, you get notified. This is the first video. I'm going to be making the second part of this video. So if you want to continue to see my video, make sure you subscribe. And if you have any question, don't hesitate to use the subscription to use the comment section. Share this video to others so that they can see it. Like the video so that you support the channel. The only way you can support this channel and encourage me to do more is by subscribing and liking the video, because when you like and subscribe, YouTube will recommend this video to many other persons. I will see you in the part 2 of this video. Take care and have a good night.